I'm sorry.
Almost a year later.
Yeah, it's just going to happen almost every time, at least in my head. So every once in a while, I have to like sneak it in there. But
do you feel better?
Guys, I do. We're just excited to be together and back in the swing of things. And we've got a really, really creepy episode for you guys.
This is a new series.
Yes.
Do you want to tell them what it is?
Sure. It's like mind control almost. It's our cult episode.
I mean, we're not going to be controlling minds, but it's amazing to explore how people can have their minds controlled.
It's so terrifying.
It is.
You know, just like how groupthink can completely take over just
peer pressure.
Hundreds of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to be jumping into a few different cults, and then we have a little discussion at the end that some of you...
You might not like it, but we're the girls that go there, man.
Yeah, we take it to the edge. We take it to the limit.
Yes.
So.
But before we get to that, we have an exciting announcement.
We do.
So we're trying to amp up some different things for season 2. But the top thing that we're most excited about is that we have a new way for you to submit your listener stories. We heard you guys when you were saying that sometimes you don't have the time to sit down and type it out. So we got a very special Spooky Sisters phone number for you. And all you have to do is call and leave us a voicemail of your spooky story, and it will write a transcription for us. And then we can read it in our next Listener Stories episode.
You guys, I don't think technology is going anywhere. I think it's here to stay.
It's amazing. So if you want to call and leave us a listener story, you can call us at 470-289-0226. We're trying to record a greeting, but for whatever reason, technology is failing us tonight.
Like,
so hopefully there will be...
us, yes.
Yeah, hopefully you'll hear us talk to you beforehand, but if not, rest assured, that's our number. So...
And if you want to just do it the old-fashioned way, like we always have, we are still accepting emails at our Gmail, which is goodlucksleepingpodcast@gmail.com. And either one is totally fine. And, you know, they could end up in our listener story episodes.
And if you want to find us in other places, we are on Facebook at the Good Luck Sleeping Podcast. We are on Instagram at Good Luck Sleeping Podcast and Twitter at GL Sleeping. You can also listen to us on our website, goodlucksleeping.libsyn.com. We are also on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts if you're someone who uses that platform.
I'm sure somebody does.
Somebody out there.
So
Todd.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, good for you, Todd.
It.
Good for you.
Anyway.
Well,
Cults.
I think we're just going to get into it, huh?
Creepy. So, for those of you who can't see this, which is like all of you, I'm drinking in this episode, so we'll see how that goes.
Someone's not pregnant anymore. We're drinking, you know, old school Smirnoff ices. I've got original, and Kayla has peach. So
it is, you know, I'm from Georgia. Why not?
That's true. That's true.
Well, I needed to chug a little alcohol because the cult that I'm talking about is a sex cult. So this next segment is not for children and may not be safe for work, depending on if you're listening with earbuds or not.
Does your grandma listen to us?
My grandma?
Yeah.
No, my grandma doesn't even know what a podcast is. I've had to explain
That's
it like
too bad.
4 times.
I'll go ahead and send her the link for this.
No, I told her. She was like, "So what is that thing that you do?" And I'm like, "Grandma, it's like a radio show, but not your type of thing."
Yeah.
She's like, "Well, what do you talk about? Ghosts?" Oh no,
Yeah.
that's not my thing. So anyway, the cult that we're going to talk about, it's pretty new and pretty relevant because it just got busted like last year. I think it was 2018, actually. Sorry. We're in 2020 now, so just barely last year. It's called Nexium, and I tried to look up the reason for naming it that, but apparently it was just like a clever title. But it's spelled Nxivm.
Yeah.
And
I thought it was the weight loss system.
Oddly enough,
could be a cult. I mean, multi-level marketing. We don't know.
Well, his cult is basically a gigantic pyramid scheme, and we're going to get into that.
Really?
Yes.
Well, that's ironic.
So it started out supposed to be like a self-help group to control emotions and boost your career. It was to help women who had insecurities find themselves and become their best self. Okay?
And this was led by a dude?
They didn't know that at first.
Oh,
they
okay.
had women that would recruit these girls. Okay.
Oh.
So there's your pyramid scheme. He was actually the guy that was leading this got busted for a pyramid scheme back in like the 90s or 80s, I think it was. And it was a legit pyramid scheme. And he got busted and then came back with this afterward. And he just kind of like took his knowledge of pyramid schemes and put it into it. It's very interesting. So
it's very weird.
The leader, Keith Raniere, I read it like it was different in 2 different places, but his name's Keith. He was also known as the Vanguard. He would draw women in through other women under the guise of self-help classes, and then some of them would be brought into his harem as sex slaves.
This is very Jeffrey Epstein-ish.
Yes.
Okay.
It's so creepy. They would even be branded with his initials, which they were told were the 4 elements. The 4th, being fire, would seal the design on their bodies in a 45-minute ceremony.
Okay.
It's so awful. In the 90s, he was regarded as the most ethical man in the world and someone who could help them lead more fulfilling lives. He was literally known around the world as the most ethical man. Okay. How that happened, I don't know, but he painted himself that way and people took it and ran with it. NXIVM's curriculum brainwashed women into believing whatever Keith said was gospel, and any deviation from that was heresy, even to the point of unwelcome sexual contact.
Oh.
So he would like get them brainwashed and then lead them in, or have the girls lead them into this room, and they'd be blindfolded, and then he would do things to them.
Ew.
Yeah. And they just had to go with it.
I feel like it's very Jeffrey Epstein.
It's so gross. He did have a taste for underage girls.
Ugh.
A lot of these girls that he kind of brought into his inner circle started at like age 15 and 16 around him.
That's disgusting.
It is. So let's see. The cult operated like many, requiring zealous commitment to one leader, discouraging dissent, and controlling members through shame, guilt, and peer pressure. He swindled many girls by charging thousands of dollars for these courses. Okay. And then he took it further by forming a group called DOS, in which he pulled some of those women from these courses to be branded as his sex slaves. Now, DOS stood for Dominus Obsequious Sororium.
Just rolls off the tongue.
It really does. It's a Latin phrase that reportedly translates to master over slave women. Okay. Now, why nobody Googled this stuff? It was like, oh my God, you know, it just blows my mind.
I feel like I would be the type of person that wouldn't Google it. I'd be like, oh, makes sense. Okay.
I don't feel like you would be that type of person at all. Just led in, blindfolded, tied down, and like, no, that's not you. I send you pictures of balls for a reason, Rachel.
That's true. You guys, she does all the time. She has an obsession with genitalia.
Just Bigfoot balls and cat balls.
So weird.
It's so funny because you get so uncomfortable.
I know, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Everybody thinks I'm the innocent one.
No, I wouldn't call me innocent, but I would call me less inclined to want to look at balls.
There's literally a text that goes, Kayla, why do you keep sending me pictures of balls? Anyway, I digress. So Keith Raniere, this is how kooky he got, okay? So the most ethical man in the world, supposedly a genius. He allegedly believed women were controlled by his sperm.
Oh,
A former member told this person that was interviewing them that Raniere believed the women he had sex with were all connected via his sperm, and this was another way of controlling those in his harem. Supposedly, though, it worked because they would just follow him blindly.
Yeah.
No questions about it. He was also thought that he could affect the weather and technology.
I love how like they get a little bit of confidence, these cult leaders, and then they're like, oh yeah, I can also do this and this and this.
I know.
Illusionist.
I've got magic fingers.
Yes. It's so weird.
So basically, it got to the point when people came into contact with him, it was like they were meeting God. They were awestruck. Mm-hmm. So you didn't want to argue with God, you know?
Right.
Guinness Book of World Records did nobody any help. They actually listed him as one of the smartest men in the world because of his high IQ. He apparently tested at, like, in the 90s, he tested his IQ or something, and it was, like, really, really high.
In my research, I found that smart people are really prone to
becoming cult leaders.
Yes, because they think they're too smart to be brainwashed. Oh. You know what I mean?
Oh, that makes sense.
So that came up with mine, too. I'm like, honestly, guys, how could you just go along with this?
I know.
And it was all like, in my cult at least, you know, middle-aged, wealthy, you know, sometimes higher class people that are in this cult. And
a lot of his inner circle were actresses.
Yeah. And it's not just like people off the street or, you know, your everyday person. Yeah. It's a lot of the times like the higher status people. I mean, look at Scientology.
I know. And they actually said that this was very similar setup to Scientology, where you have like tiers of people and you work your way up in the ranks, which also, hello, Illuminati.
Right.
Illuminati's a cult. I mean, we can talk about that. And we have talked about that. Okay. So the Guinness Book of World Records did nobody any help there.
I really like the way how you say Guinness.
Guinness?
Guinness. Like the beer. Guinness.
Oh, I say Guinness.
I'm happy with it. I like it.
We're back at Rachel making fun of the way I speak. Okay. Good to know that's how we're going to go. All right.
I mean, I'm going to stumble over every other word when it's my turn.
So and you're going to have so much fun editing this.
Yeah.
Okay. So some women were forced to seduce him or else be blackmailed, while others were blindfolded while he had relations with them.
Ugh.
These are the accounts of sex trafficking that they were able to pin against him because all the other accounts he claimed were consensual and they didn't really have a way of fighting that. So at least he's going down for some sex trafficking. Keith's teachings were intended to improve lives, but he also used as a means to see how far you would go for him. One program taught women that they were narcissistic, self-absorbed, and manipulative, making them hate themselves and want to fix it by taking the courses. So he would like prey on their insecurities. They actually designed these courses that were led by the women. They were never led by Keith. Okay. He was kind of like hanging.
Well, that wouldn't have been received well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, his picture was in every class hanging on the wall as the vanguard. So everybody knew like who was in charge, but the women were instructed to lead these classes to find out the fears and vulnerabilities of these other women to then use it against them to pull them into his sex harem.
What was his relationship with his mother like? Do you ever like dive into his childhood?
No, they didn't. I should have looked that up.
Interesting.
So once they knew what their vulnerabilities were and their insecurities, they would then present DOS as a way that would fix that. No one mentioned that it would require you to become his sex slave.
Right.
If you fell out of line, the other women would come after you and ostracize you until you got back in line. Ugh. Honestly, as I was reading this sounded like an MLM that I was a part of, just without the sex. I'm very,
I think
very
it's almost every MLM, honestly.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, they bully you into thinking that you have to do things their way because they want to get that money, you know?
I'm sorry to everybody I sold stuff to.
Yeah,
my MLMs.
I wised up before the year was over, but I'm so sorry. I was they preyed on my insecurities. I was in a really bad place that year and I needed like sisters and the sisterhood, you know, and that's what they presented that to me as. Oh, you're going to get the best friends and you're going to get to go to weekly meetings. They didn't tell you that like you have to pay for stuff, you know, like, ugh. Okay, so people who disagreed with Keith were deemed ethical breaches and would be expected to repair that through penance or be shunned. His penance went from like, okay, you're going to go stick your feet in cold snow for 10 minutes to I'm going to lock you in a cage for 2 years. That actually happened to a girl. Her name was Daniela. He became enraged when she told him she was attracted to another man. And he told others that Daniela was being punished for acting overly prideful. So Daniela said, I felt that I was bad, that I had done something wrong, that really I had something that I needed to fix. So Keith directed that she be confined to a room until she had mended her breach. She remained in the room for nearly 2 years until her father and a senior NXIVM member drove her to the Mexican border.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. He taught that men were naturally polygamous and women were naturally monogamous.
Of course.
So they must remain so to be with him while he could be with any number of women. And he was with about 15 to 20 of his inner circle. Mm-hmm. He also promoted incest, pedophilia, and misogyny.
What a winner.
Which I feel like misogyny was pretty obvious with all that crap. But yeah. Okay. So then some of the other punishments, they would be whipped. Forced to hold painful poses for hours. It was basically anything that would break you down mentally. Lauren Salzman, who was the daughter of Nancy Salzman. Okay, let me back up. Nancy Salzman co-founded NXIVM with Keith. Okay, so it was their idea together, but she was under the guise that this was a self-help group. And then once it started coming out that that's not what it was, she was like too deep in. He'd already gotten her hooked in, so she would be just as liable for everything. So she just kept going with it. But she was actually a licensed psychotherapist. And her daughter was in charge of the brandings. Oh. And her daughter actually testified and said that he had built up an inner circle of the 15 to 20 women that I keep talking about to protect him and advocate for what he was doing, saying basically that it was okay. Okay. And they would like change, you know, what was actually happening to like bend it and try to make it sound like it was okay. I don't know how you could possibly bend that in a positive light.
Right.
So these 15 to 20 women would live in little houses near Albany, New York. I think it was Albany, New York. Pretty sure it was Albany, New York. They would parade around as confident go-getters, luring in insecure women during the day. And then at night, they would run and do his dark deeds or sleep with him, whatever he was feeling. Okay. The courses were designed to figure out... Oh, I already said that. Let's see. So the inner circle was so brainwashed that they were allowed to leave the houses and just go out in the world because he knew that they would come back.
Yep.
And one of these inner circle people was Allison Mack. I don't know if you ever watched Small World, the superhero show.
This is her cult.
Yes.
Oh.
Allison Mack. She was like one of his master slaves. So Allison Mack was a first line master. She would lure in women who were dissatisfied with themselves, telling them that NXIVM would fix it all. She even approached Emma Watson.
Oh.
Because she wanted like the feminist women because they were trying to break those girls down. This is how they sold it. Yoga was not enough. Meditation was not enough. Activism was not enough. You needed to experience complete surrender to another human being. Only then would you know pure love, or as Mac once explained it, within the shackles of commitment, I find the greatest freedom of all.
Wow.
Once they agreed to join, they would have to offer up collateral to prove they were committed, such as a solo sex tape and a fake letter claiming they were abused by their father so that he could blackmail them if they ever tried to leave.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So it's like he almost didn't believe his own lies.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Wait, what?
You know, because if he believed everything that he was doing was working, that they were really like under his spell and everything.
Like the first level of brainwashing because they weren't fully submitting yet. So he had to have something to hold over their heads so they couldn't leave until they were brainwashed.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because once they were brainwashed, he would do like the punishments and things, but he also leveraged their weight against them.
No.
He reduced their caloric intake and actually told one woman who had gained 7 pounds, "It hurts my heart physically when I am with you."
Oh, wow.
That woman in particular, he actually began having sex with when she was 16 years old. He would then positively reaffirm them by praising their bodies over and over, and then he would monitor the refrigerators with cameras. So it was like positive
run
and
for the
negative.
Hills when somebody took away my food.
I know.
Not anything else. Everything else I would have been okay with. But once he starts limiting my food,
I know.
Then it's over.
Well, for like the first, so through the 90s and the early 2000s, it was just like him and his inner circle. And then in like 2015, that's when he started developing the pyramid scheme. He wasn't happy. And that's what happens with these cult leaders. They get to a point where they're not content with what they've got. So they've got to expand and make it more horrible than it already is.
Yeah.
So in 2015, he took the pyramid scheme that he had made before and applied it to NXIVM. And the cult, like the inner circle, was able to recruit masters, and then those masters would recruit slaves, and it just kept going down and down and down. Basically, if you had someone under you, you had a little more priority. You had a little more freedom, a little more power. Okay. You were considered a master, but you were still a slave to the master above you, so it made absolutely no sense.
Right. You were just a little bit of a higher level slave.
Exactly. Yeah, you had a little more freedom. That's all it was.
The one thing I noticed about what was her name again? Mac?
Allison Mack.
Yeah, she, in all of her pictures and all of the news stories about her, I never really like dove into it, but she always had this like glossed over look on her face. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I feel like
she still goes to bat for him. She's been arrested and everything. She still goes to bat for him. She is so brainwashed.
That's sad.
And she's been under his guise for like a long time.
Yeah.
So they found out his goal was to get a political candidate under his wing, somebody in the office that could run for office. So I guarantee you that was so that he could bypass all law, because that was like his next step was, okay, well, now we got to become bulletproof, right? You know, which is so terrifying, which that proves right there. If you think the government can't be skewed.
Yeah, but he never made it in.
No, he didn't make it in, but he knew that he could if he could get somebody under his wing. He just never got to that point because he got caught. And I'll tell you how he got caught. It unraveled when some of his slaves were found to have husbands, okay? So they go to these courses thinking, oh, I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to become a better me. Then they get lured in to become these sex slaves. Well, then they got to get branded. And the brand, I'll show you a picture of this, but it goes on their bikini line.
Okay.
What husband isn't going to notice that on his wife?
Right.
You know? So there was one man in particular that was like, I don't think this Keith guy is who he says he is. And his wife had to like confess it, even I think they even did the blackmail to her, and she was like, I can't hide it from my husband,
Right.
But that was why he insisted everybody be monogamous,
Uh-huh.
so it never came back on him. And then that totally backfired. Keith's sentencing has been adjourned indefinitely, and he faces life in prison when he is eventually sentenced. Allison Mack, I think, faces up to, it's either 15 years or life as well. And then I think Lauren Saltzman got off a little bit easier. Or nobody's actually been sentenced yet, but I think she's looking at an easier sentence because she kind of like blabbed on everybody.
What do you mean indefinitely, though?
Is
delayed indefinitely?
Yeah, because they want to take the time to dig up all they can on him so that they can properly prosecute him.
So they will. It just they have. They're in like the gathering.
He had a
stage.
court date in May 2019. He was supposed to be sentenced, I think, this month, actually January.
Yeah.
But because they didn't have the case that they wanted, they want to make sure they get everything.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just like in prison chilling until they decide that they're ready to prosecute.
Okay.
So I'm just like, give him all the stuff. Give him the death penalty.
I mean, there's no penance for ruining, dozens of people's lives. How many people were in the cult?
Oh, I mean,
total?
Tons of people.
Yeah.
There were tons of women. But it was just the 20 that were in the inner circle that they knew of, Some of the women never made it past the courses, but they were still swindled out of thousands of dollars for these supposed self-help courses, which probably actually gave them more of a complex than clearing it up, So.
Very true. Well,
cults, people.
That's intense.
They're lurking around the corner. You never know when you could get sucked into one.
It's very true. Stay away from
Be careful
MLMs.
who you follow. Yeah, stay away from that multi-level marketing.
So my cult. Actually, before I dive into it, I've told you this before, but I actually know somebody that's in a cult.
Yes.
Yeah. And we hung out a few times. She was a very religious person. So I feel like she was kind of easy to walk down the path of this particular cult because I'm not going to say what it is. I don't know. I guess they'll never really find out, but it's the Wells Church cult. So it's a very religious cult. You can look it up. It's been featured on the Dr. Phil show. I don't know how much credibility Dr. Phil has, but there is an episode where a few people, I think actually just one man came out of the cult and then talked about his experiences there. And then it was the parents of another girl who's in the cult that they have been trying to kind of get out, but she's still stuck in there and married and has kids.
That's always so sad, like when the family members are trying to like get their kid out or, their siblings out or whatever it is. And they are just so sucked in. They even may want to leave, but they can't because of whatever is being held over them. Blackmail is very popular in cults.
Well, yeah. And especially when it goes into the religious sect.
Yes.
And it's not just some person saying,
you
hey,
feel like
I am God. Yeah. This is more Christian based. And so they still serve Christian God, and they don't leave because they feel like if they do, like you said, they're eternally damned or whatever. Exactly. So, but anyway, so this girl I had known, she's my age, and she came from a very religious family, didn't wear makeup, wore dresses, kind of followed the Old Testament rules, but she was a nice person, and I think even then, though, I was like, ooh, we're not going to click because I am not sovereign enough for this friendship. But eventually, even on Facebook, she would only post Christian things and verses and all that type of a thing. And then eventually she deleted me, I think, because I was too worldly. So I ran into her sister recently and I was like, hey, what happened to so-and-so? And she's like, oh, she's in a cult now. It's sad. It's really sad, but she is, she's even, I won't give any more details out there, but, hopefully she finds her way out and it's not causing too much damage, but that's one that you guys can look up on your own if you're interested at all. Yes. But my cult that I researched is called The Family. Doesn't that sound nice?
Ooh.
Yeah. Most of the research I got from this was from 48 Hours. It was a documentary called The Family, A Cult Revealed. And it was fascinating. It was kind of interesting to watch actual footage of the people. I chose it because it was led by a woman. Oh. And I feel like not many cults are female led. So
that's true.
Yeah. I can't think of, honestly, another one off the top of my head. I'm sure there are, but
yeah, I can't think of anything.
Anyway,
my brain's not working.
So, it's called The Family. It's also called the Santanican Park Association, or the Great White Brotherhood.
And you made fun of me with Guinness.
I feel like Santa Nikitan. It's a little bit more advanced, but no. I like.
Are you calling me stupid?
No, you're much smarter than me. Trust me.
Oh,
all right. Anyway, so this is a cult from Australia.
Don't beat yourself up like that. We have power in different areas.
No, you are much smarter than I am. It's a cult from Australia, and it was formed in the mid-1960s, so it is not presently around in its full form. I think there are still some sects that are.
Did it ever spread away from Australia?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Which, by the way, if you guys can, please donate to help with Australia, because
100%.
It is terrifying what is happening over there. And I keep seeing the pictures of like the burnt kangaroos.
I know. Oh my gosh, I know. So yeah, I mean, it's been a year already.
It has. It's only 5 days into January.
Yeah, we might be.
We're
creeping
going to
into
World War III.
Mm-hmm.
Australia's on fire.
Yeah, I have a cousin in Australia, and I'm like, "Are you okay?"
Oh my word!
I know. So, but yes, so 1960s, and it was led by a woman. Her name was Anne Hamilton, and she was a yoga teacher. And she came to believe...
Yoga's not enough.
I guess not. She came to believe that she was another reincarnation of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
And that she also had human royal blood. So she had royalty on the physical world and the spiritual world.
Right.
So Anne was a child collector. She wanted lots and lots of children, but she wanted them all to be perfectly behaved and perfect looking. If they didn't have blonde hair, she would dye their hair blonde. But if they had red hair, they could keep their red hair because she herself was a natural redhead. She only had one child of her own, which was a daughter. And she enlisted aunties to help raise and discipline the children. So I don't remember how many aunties there were.
This is very Handmaid's Tale.
It is. I know. I forgot how many aunties she had. I don't think that there were that many, maybe like 5 or so, but they were the disciplinarians and the children were terrified of the aunties. Oh the children, there were 28 in total at the time the cult was taken down, were either born from cult members, were taken from unwed mothers.
Oh my God.
So these women would go into the hospital and give birth to their babies, and they would be coerced into giving Anne her babies, thinking that she was going to give them to nice adopted families.
This is literally the Handmaid's Tale.
I know. Yeah.
That's
so
terrible.
It's so sad. I know. So they were given to the cult, or the cult stole them at birth, like downright stole babies.
This is why, like, I was blown away when I had my baby. They had special tags, and they said, if anybody comes in here that does not have this purple tag,
yes,
you do not trust them. They had a little tracker on my son's foot.
Yep.
That he was not allowed to take off until we were walking out the door.
Exactly.
And we had to prove that we were his parents when we did that too.
Yep.
So this is the reason
I know
that hospitals have to do that kind of crap.
I know. Yeah. It's very terrifying. They were all given the same last name of Hamilton Byrne. I'll get into the Byrne part of Hamilton in a minute here. And all the children were told that they were sisters and siblings and brothers. They were all related, and that Anne was their biological mother.
Oh my God.
She believed that an apocalypse was coming and would wipe out most of mankind. So she was kind of raising a little army that would help guide and grow the race again in the new age.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So the members of the cult and the children over the age of 14 were given LSD regularly. This is so funny. Not that it wasn't funny that they were given drugs, but this helped Anne keep her godlike qualities as the members would look at her while tripping out.
Oh my gosh.
And she would appear otherworldly. She even made the aunties put dry ice behind her while they were tripping out so that there would be like fog coming up.
What the hell?
It's so weird. The kids and the adults were warned not to tell outsiders or the police what was going on.
She gave the children LSD?
Dude, I know. Messed up.
What the actual... Oh my God.
I know. Yeah. They were told not to tell outsiders or the police what was going on, or she would have the aunties put a burlap sack over their head and they would be beaten and raped. She also threatened the adult members with sending them to an insane asylum if they went against her. Because
I'd go.
Yeah, I know. Well,
just send me off.
Well, she had cult connections with a local asylum.
Oh.
And many of her members for the cult came from the asylum, as the psychiatrists who worked there were members.
No.
I know. Yeah.
How do these people get these underlings? Like, do they have to get them bit by bit? They can't just be like, okay, here's the plan. We're going to feed LSD to children. Okay. Children.
Yes.
You're going to blow some dry ice behind me. And then everybody who comes through that has psychiatric problems, you're going to send them my way.
Right.
Like that would never fly.
No.
They have to get them like from the get-go or something.
Right. It was baby steps to the big cult. So the children were sent to live separately from the adults and cared for by the aunties and Anne. And they were forced to call Anne mother. The aunties starved the kids, beat them, gave them cold showers, and one asthmatic boy was made to stay outside at night in the cold. They were frightened all the time, and they were worried for each other because they didn't know what was going to happen from one moment to the next.
These poor kids.
I know. Sometimes they said that Anne would, if she was traveling or out somewhere and one of the children misbehaved, she would make the aunties call her so that she could hear the punishment on the other end of the line. It's messed up.
What happened to her to make her this evil?
Well, ironically, I'm about to get into her background.
Okay. Well, thank you. I didn't have info on that.
It really doesn't give you any insight. I mean, she didn't have a perfect childhood, but it wasn't crazy.
Super screwed up.
Yeah, Anne's mom was schizophrenic growing up. I don't know if she was treated or not, so that might have caused some issues for her.
Especially if she also was schizophrenic.
Right, because I know that could run around and we're running the line there. And her father was not around often because of work.
She had daddy issues,
I guess. She turned to yoga and began studying Eastern religions. She created a new persona for herself and made herself a spiritual guide. I mean, obviously, the reincarnation of Jesus there.
So she knew that she wasn't God because she had to have them trip out on LSD, but to some degree, sounded like she believed that she was important.
Well, I think it's one of those things where she believed that she was a spiritual guide, but again, that wasn't enough for her. So eventually,
guide you into drug addiction.
She thought of herself as a reincarnation of Jesus, and I think she did 100% believe that for herself.
Like, okay, I've never done drugs. Definitely would never touch LSD, but that scene, okay.
Across the universe?
No. Okay, so spoiler for you, season 2. Anybody stop listening.
Oh.
But that scene where he gets, like, dosed up on acid and he's talking to Love in her eye, I about jumped out of my skin. Like, I can't imagine sitting there and going through that every single day.
Let's take a moment and talk about how good of a boyfriend Joe really is.
No!
What an
What's
angel.
really scary is my husband's name is Joe. So. Thankfully not Joe Goldberg, but Rachel is like, I mean, she would bow down and marry this man.
If you do
you
not...
would get sucked into a cult.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, if you don't step out of line, Joe's an angel. Just the perfect boyfriend.
But you never know what stepping out of the line is. That's the thing. It starts out something is predictable, and then it gets to the point where you just never know what it is.
You would be happy in my love. I mean, I am happily married, so don't worry. I mean, you don't have to worry about me running to a psychopath, but if I was single, shoot, I'd walk down that road. Anyway, all right. So this is the new persona that she had created for herself, but she needed credibility because she grew up poor and didn't have many connections, especially to people of influence. So she sought out a respected psychiatrist and author, Raynard Johnson.
Oh.
So he was an older guy, like pretty old. Okay. And
he's like, you'll die with my secrets soon. It's okay.
Well, what she did was she had sex with Raynard's gardener and ended up finding out privileged information about Raynard. So she came to him and made it seem as though she was clairvoyant when she regurgitated the information.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. He was very wealthy and gullible and believed everything Anne had said about himself. So he was sold.
I just want to know how that plan came to be. Like, she goes and sees this dude mowing his lawn. She's like, that's my way.
Yeah, the gardener. He's got to know some juicy details.
I would never sit there and be like, the gardener's the key, you know?
Feed me some morsels of truth about this man. So he had a large following, and he turned them over to her after this little happening.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. Okay, one thing that I didn't quite understand was she, quote unquote, performed miracles,
With dry ice.
With dry ice. No. One of them was the story about a woman named Joy. She was an older woman and she had a calcified spine and she wasn't able to like move around. She was bedridden. And she came to her and said, "If you follow me, you will walk again." And apparently she was able to walk again.
Okay, either that woman was planted or she didn't have the issue that she thought she had.
Right. Or it's the power of your mind.
Oh, yeah. There's so many. Okay, so growing up, I went with a friend who her parents were very much into, like, I don't know what the word is, like charismatic churches, but to the extreme that you like question if they're actually even godly, you know?
Sure. Like snake venom, and all that type of stuff. Yeah.
So I had to go with her one time and they had everybody line up in the front and I had no idea what was going on. And the guy came around to every single person and would pray and then push your head. And if you didn't fall back, you were like demonic or something.
That's the church I grew up in. Exactly like that.
Well, I just closed my eyes and fell because I didn't want to be deemed demonic. And he literally, it was supposed to be the power of the Holy Spirit knocking you over. I felt the fingers. He punched me in the forehead, you know, and my friend who was tagging along was so scared of it that she just volunteered to be my catcher and caught me and then pretended to be praying over me so that that wouldn't have to happen to her. So I took one for the team. Yeah. But that kind of stuff is so terrifying. And I can see how you can get peer pressured into it because that's exactly what happened to me because I was just like, I don't want anything worse than this to happen. So I'm just going to go with it, you know?
Sure. Or the people who think that they've been healed when they really haven't, you know?
Yes. Well, that's what I was getting to that. Like those kind of churches, they're notorious for having like those healing sessions where they like pray over you, and if you don't get up and walk after being paralyzed or what, well, I guess if you're actually paralyzed it's kind of hard to do that, but if it's just like a mental thing, it's very easy to overcome that mentally, you know. Or if you say, "Oh, my whole body hurts, you know, pray over me," and then suddenly they're like, "You're healed," and you're like,
I guess I am.
I can move, you know.
Right.
And then it's like days later you realize you weren't actually healed. But, and I'm not saying that there aren't miracles and things like that, but these kind of instances for sure where they're like forcing that stuff, don't believe it. 100% do not believe it.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, obviously she thought it was a miracle and joined the cult and brought her family in also. So, okay, shortly after that, Anne set her sights on a man named Bill Byrne. That's where the Hamilton Byrne comes from.
Okay.
Bill was married and successful building contractor, but Anne charmed her way into his heart, and he left his wife and married Anne, and they became the cult's joint leaders. So messed up.
That's not godly at all.
No. Well, she was Jesus, so it was okay. It wasn't a sin. The adults of the cult lived on the same street as Anne, but they kept their outside lives and careers. So, you know, like...
So they were allowed to go out just like the inner circle of Keith Rainier's was.
Exactly. Gotcha. And they were, you know, they needed to work because they had to bring in that money so that she could live off of them.
She's like a giant parasite.
She really is. Honestly. She liked to play God among the members. She would frequently break up marriages and families. Sometimes she would go to one woman and say, "I don't like you with him. I'm going to put you with so-and-so's husband. And then I'm going to put so-and-so's husband with Sharon. I think they would work. That's what God is telling me. They need to be a couple." And she would also take their children and move them around in different families.
You know what? This woman just needed The Sims. She just needed a computer and The Sims, and it would have all been okay.
I guess, you know, it hadn't come out yet, so she had to do something. She would give the couple children sometimes. So she gave a member of the cult named Fran Parker a little
just give them a child.
Yes. Yeah. Because she stole these kids, you know. She had some to spare, I guess, sometimes.
This is making me anxious.
I know.
Please tell me she's prosecuted.
Oh, you're going to... Okay, you'll find out. She gave Fran a little baby boy, and Fran was ecstatic. She fell in love with this little baby boy, and she was excited to raise him. But shortly after, Anne ordered her to leave her husband, who she loved very much too. And because Anne was so influential and charming and charismatic, Fran obliged. But I think she still raised the boy. I wasn't clear on what happened.
Okay, good.
So Anne and Bill used the members' money to travel and buy houses abroad.
Of course.
And I already told you this part. Well, while she was gone, the aunties were in charge. And the aunties would remind the kids, if they misbehaved, that Anne would always say that it was better to have a dead child than a child who lied. So messed up.
Oh my God.
I know.
No amount of therapy could fix these poor kids' psyches.
Tell me about it. It's messed up. Anne was very good to her pets, though. She had many pets, dogs and cats, who she treated like her kids also. And they would also be fed and eat better than the kids. So sometimes the kids would wait for the animals to be fed and for the animals to get their bones, and they would go and scavenge because that's the only way that they could get their bellies full.
I'm too hormonal for this, Rachel.
You ready for this?
No, I am not. I refuse.
When one of Anne's beloved pets would pass away, she would have a multi-day ceremony for the deceased pet and make the children sleep in the same room as its decomposing body.
Why?
I think so they could all mourn over it and be part of the ceremony. I don't know. So
That's awful.
Okay.
I mean, not near as awful as half the other things you told me, but that's still really bad.
It's messed up. One child, Leanne, was tired of the hunger and abuse and decided to stand up to Anne face to face one day. I think she was in her teens. I can't remember exactly how old she was. Anne was furious when she was being stood up to and attacked her violently. She ended up slapping Leanne, but Leanne was pissed and slapped her back.
Go, Leanne.
Yeah, but then Leanne was terrified of the repercussions and fled out a nearby window that was open. This part is so sad. So she saw a light in a window, of a house down the lake, and she knocked on the door, and a kindly older couple inside opened the door, greeted her, and called the police for her. The police came and then called the aunties because the aunties had been seen around the village and people kind of knew who they were. So they called the aunties and they convinced the police that Leanne was unstable. So the police brought her back.
No.
I know. Surprisingly, Leanne wasn't punished, and it was 2 more years before she got the courage to escape again. She ended up running to the same couple's house, and the same police officers responded. But this time she's like, absolutely not. I would rather literally live on the streets in the gutter than go back to this house.
Seriously, yeah.
So they finally took her seriously and ended up putting her in a foster home. So Leanne, I mean, it's that whole brainwashing thing. She didn't really dive into her past too much. She was just kind of laser focused on her future. She wanted nothing to do with what it was. Although she thought about her, brothers and sisters, quote unquote, often. And she was not, her job wasn't done there. But for a while, she did kind of just focus on life and kind of reacclimating to the world.
I can't even imagine where you'd begin.
I know.
You have nothing to your name. You have no concept of how the world actually works because you've been raised in this.
Right. I know. Yeah. I guess she wanted to buy new clothes and she had no idea where to get money. So she ended up going to the bank and asking for $50.
Oh,
they're like, no, honey, you can't just come here and ask for money. But she had no clue on how it worked. Another girl, Sarah, was 17 and had a falling out with Anne, and she was excommunicated and sought out help. She was sent to the same foster family as Leanne. But because of this, both of the girls' testimonies matched up, and the police finally took their stories seriously. But again, brainwashing, the girls believed that because of this and because they were going against Anne, they were going to be cursed. Because I guess whenever anybody went against Anne, she would write their names on a piece of paper and freeze it in ice, and that person was eternally damned. So,
oh my God,
this was a very stressful time for the police. Or I mean, for the girls.
Yeah, I bet.
So the police raided the compound in August of 1987. On the day of the raid, only 7 children were living at the compound at the time. Others were with their parents and blah, blah, blah. But not a single adult was arrested. The children were all taken, though, and sent to a group home while the police were conducting their investigation. There were a few heroes on the scene. It was a female reporter. I can't exactly remember her name, but she was a justice seeker for them. And a man named Lex DeMann, who was another investigator. So these two together made sure that justice was served.
Good.
Sort of. The aunties and the adult influential members were not charged with child abuse, but rather with fraud.
Oh, please.
As they had stolen thousands from the government. There was no physical...
That's all the government cares about is the money they lost.
Well, there was no physical evidence to back up any other charges.
The broken brains of the children wasn't enough evidence?
They needed hospital reports or police reports. They needed stuff like that, so they couldn't charge her for what she really needed to go down for. Later, though, Anne's former lawyer left the cult and was able to tell the police that they had committed perjury by falsifying birth certificates. This was finally a charge strong enough to bring the Burns home because they had fled. And they were on the run for 4.5 years and ended up in rural New York following another yoga instructor.
Oh my gosh.
Anne had kind of slipped up by making a call to a former child cult member, and the call was traced back to the property in New York where they took him down. So she and Bill pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of making a false declaration, which was falsifying the birth certificates, and each of them were fined $5,000. Neither of them ever spent a night in jail.
That is so sick. Is she dead? Please tell me she's dead.
She is. She died at age, I think, 90 or something like that.
She didn't deserve it.
Just last year. Well, in... I think 2000, it was either 18 or 19, but yeah, she's gone. But the cult is still going. It's just kind of wavering because there's no, founding member anymore.
Yeah.
So they're trying to figure out who should be in charge.
Wow.
And that's that. That's my cult.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I thought my sex cult was bad. That's really bad.
It was pretty messed up. Yeah. And she was an old woman when she was charged. So, I mean, I think that played into them not going too hard on her because she was a frail old lady, and they were like, well, she doesn't need to go in jail.
She got what she deserved in the afterlife.
I mean, hopefully. So
that's so sick.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a finishing little kind of not debate, just chat to have with you guys and kind of see what you guys think about it, right?
Yeah. I have an opinion, and I've shared it in our Facebook group a couple times, and it has not been well received. So I thought, hey, I'm going to talk about it. I gathered up all of my proof, and we're going to discuss it and see what Rachel thinks.
I don't think I'll be too hard to sway.
Yeah. I think to us, it's pretty obvious just because it is. A lot has happened since I first posed this question in the group, though. So to keep you off your toes or get you off your toes, Kanye West, is he starting a cult? Okay, so I went back and I studied this man. He was revered back in 2004 because he put out a song called Jesus Walks, and it was
was in 2004?
The first thing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
First thing, yeah. So 2004, he put out a song called Jesus Walks, and it kind of started this conversation that, oh my gosh, you can mesh Christianity and hip hop. Now, I listened to Jesus Walks. It's not Christian at all. In fact, it's listed explicit. So I don't understand how you can call that gospel. Worship. Yeah, gossip or gospel. But what I've found is he's not so much gospel as he is gospel themed. It's kind of like the it thing to pretend like he's Christian or whatever, and he just kind of goes with it and applies those themes but doesn't fully commit. So you'll see that. So he has said a couple quotes that I would like to use here.
Excited?
He said, hip hop is a religion to a certain extent, and the rappers are the preachers. The music is the scriptures, Mr. West says in an archival clip resurfaced in the docu-series, it's just like church because you go to a concert, you raise your hands in the air, you sing songs, and you definitely pay some money. It's just like church.
Huh. I mean, I don't disagree.
But the spirituality, the whole reason that you're doing that, you're worshiping someone.
Sure.
He is basically suggesting you're worshiping the rapper instead of God.
I mean, but that's kind of true, though, for a lot of people.
I know, but that doesn't make you Christian or gospel or anything.
But I see his reasoning. I would so be in a cult. I mean, honestly. I'd be sucked in so fast.
His wife, Kim Kardashian West, said of his Sunday service that he started. That's what he does. He has this little group that meets across town and everything. I'll talk about that in a second, but he calls it Sunday service. Kim Kardashian West said, there's no praying, there's no sermon, there's no word. It's just music and it's just a feeling.
Oh.
So then let's talk about the Sunday service first. Okay, so the location changes every week. Now, I know some of these mega churches around here, before they got like an established building, they had to change locations because they couldn't just rent the same place every week because there were things that were going to be playing there, and they'd have to get on a schedule. So, for instance, there's a mega church here in Atlanta that I attended back like 10 years ago. Before they got like a permanent building, and they would meet at different large venues around Atlanta every week, and they'd announce on their website what place it was going to be. And then eventually they raised the funds to build their building, and now they're kind of like in central Atlanta. So I can understand why maybe the location changes every week.
Okay.
It could also be like trying to hide a trail, but we'll just assume the best. Okay. Now this one I can't vouch for. The attendees are invite only and asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Oh!
Yeah, sounds a little fishy, doesn't it? Beyond
Dang, that's like prestigious.
Yeah. Beyond that, there's a dress code for the choir and the attendees, and it usually is Yeezy fashion. He sends it out the week of the Sunday service, and everybody has to dress accordingly.
Okay, I was sold for like the choir. I'm like, yeah, sure, because they need to like look uniform.
No,
sure.
You legit have to wear it if you're invited to this thing, and then sign an NDA.
I guess you're going to be rich when you're like, you can't be poor and be invited.
No.
Okay.
And that's what he sucks in all these celebrities. Justin Bieber has been, Brad Pitt has been, Katy Perry has been.
Brad Pitt, that's disappointing.
Of course, all the Kardashians.
Yeah.
Who was, there was somebody else. I can't remember who it was. Anyway. Okay, so then Kanye this past year started this thing where he kind of like took the Sunday service on a tour around the United States. Okay. And he went to different churches and venues and kind of like had his little Sunday service there for those people. He also, it kind of started when he performed at Coachella. He did his Sunday service that Sunday morning at Coachella, and this was the first time when people weren't invite only, but you had to pay the festival ticket price, which is thousands of dollars to come.
Right.
So it was still like you had to buy your way in.
Yeah.
So anyway, he started his tour, and recently he ended up in Georgia at Joel Osteen's church. Now, a lot of people...
I heard like little bits and pieces of that, but I just heard their names together. I didn't realize
a lot of
he was at
people
their church.
in the Christian world don't like Joel Osteen. Okay, he's kind of corrupt. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion of him. So for him to have Kanye there to speak and do his little thing, it was a little like, okay.
Yeah.
That's just more confirmation than I need. At this, Kanye made a little speech. And he said,
he's such an unstable person.
He really is. He said, you know how his like speech style, he just kind of like word vomits?
Yeah, and like blurts out anything that comes to his mind. Yeah.
You want to know what he said?
Sure.
He said, Jesus has won the victory. I told you about my arrogance and cockiness already. Now the greatest artist that God has ever created is working for him.
Oh God.
He's talking about himself, just in case anybody was not clear.
He's like the literal worst.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so when he talked about the Sunday service, he said it's just an idea we had to open up our hearts to make music that we felt was as pure and as positive as possible, and just do it for an hour every Sunday and have something where people can just come together and feel good with their families. ... while wearing my Yeezy fashion line, invite only, signing that NDA. I mean, he doesn't add any of that, but it's just like we come together as one to sing music and be positive. So not only do they not sing worship music, they actually remix popular songs that may be like totally secular. I mean, have nothing to do with God, but they remix them in a gospel way.
I went to a church that did that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it was Ryan's old church.
Oh my goodness.
My husband.
I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, it was very strange to me. It was a new, there's people that listen that might still go to that church. So I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying it was unique to me to walk in and hear like top 40 songs being sung, from the pulpit or whatever. No, I don't think they ever did that. But they wouldn't like mix it to be spiritual or have like a God side
they wouldn't even do that?
No, they just sang it. I think it was like to make people feel comfortable.
Well, he remixes it, so it's like got the black choir thing. And apparently, I'm not familiar with like the Southern Black churches, but apparently that is a thing for Southern Black churches. He's kind of taken that from them.
Okay.
But like twisted it a little bit, and they're not really happy about it.
Yeah. I don't think that's super weird. It's kind of remixing songs.
Weird to me.
I mean, I would join this. No, I'm just kidding.
Of course you would. But then he actually came out with his Jesus is King album, and it's still gospel themed. It's not necessarily gospel. He does make some more Christian statements on there.
Have you listened to it?
I've listened to some of it, especially the hard-hitting Closed on Sunday, the ode to Chick-fil-A.
I didn't know that he sung that.
You did. I have the lyrics here. Would you like to know what it says?
I don't know.
Closed on Sunday, you're my Chick-fil-A. Hold the selfies, put the gram away. Get your family, y'all hold hands and pray. When you got daughters, always keep them safe. Watch out for vipers, don't let them indoctrinate. Closed on Sunday, you my Chick-fil-A. I can't do this.
Is this a real song? Like
you're my number one with the lemonade. Raise our sons, train them in the faith. Through temptations, make sure they're wide awake. Follow Jesus, listen and obey. No more living for the culture, we nobody's slaves. Stand up for my home, even if I take this walk alone. I bow down to the king upon the throne.
Well, you're
my
really
life is his.
Well,
I'm no longer my own. What?
You're really getting into it.
I know. I pray to God that he'll strengthen my hand. They will think twice stepping onto my land. I draw the line, it's written in the sand. Try me, and you will see that I ain't playing. Now, back up off my family and move your hands. I got my weapons in the spirit's land. I, Jezebel, don't even stand a chance. Jezebel, don't even stand a chance. Chick-fil-A.
I'd rather you send me pictures of balls than ever do that again. It made me really uncomfortable. But that's really on his album?
Yes! And people are like, praise Jesus over this song. So the rest of the album is pretty much the exact same way. And I'm just sitting there baffled about how people can be like, like...
Okay, I mean, don't yuck someone else's yum.
I'm not trying to, but you might want to reevaluate and look a little deeper. This is how people get sucked into cults, because it comes under the guise of something that seems okay.
A pretty little package.
Exactly, yeah. And they don't question it. So I'm sorry that I question everything, okay? Okay, so then...
See, this is because just like I believe in everything, that's why I'd be so easily sucked in. I'd be like,
you need me, Rachel. You need my skepticism to be like, Rachel, no.
See, you're much smarter
than
I am.
We don't do cults, honey.
I'd be like, no, just listen to me. This is what you have to do. You just have to wear these they're nice clothes. I mean, we just have to wear these nice clothes.
I don't think he even sends them to them. They have to go buy their own Yeezys, okay? Okay, so then...
You love Chick-fil-A.
I do love Chick-fil-A, but for the food. And the lemonade.
Number one with a side of lemonade.
I know. Okay, so at these things, he sells Kanye merch at extremely high prices.
Obviously.
He's even tried to trademark the phrase Sunday service to put on the merch. His album is gospel themed, which is different from an actual gospel album, which I've, beaten into at this point. The lyrics are positive and pious, not necessarily worshiping God, though there are some Christian statements like Jesus is king or, whatever thrown in there. Now, this is where it gets creepier. He has now purchased 2 ranches in Wyoming.
Oh.
And no one knows the reason why. Now, Wyoming. When you think of Wyoming, what do you think of, Rachel?
Beautiful, wide open spaces, prairies. I've never been there. But...
Literally no humans around. Why would you want 2 ginormous ranches with over 4,000 acres each?
Sure.
Maybe so you don't have neighbors.
Sure.
There's already NDAs being signed. No one knows the exact reason why he's bought them, but it's speculated he plans to build a permanent venue for his Sunday service. Maybe
he just got a great deal. I mean, and it just happened to be Wyoming.
Oh, yeah, $14 million. That's a great deal. Although I did read that he supposedly did not pay the full price. Probably because he signed and said that it was like a 401. No. What's that? The Christian... Here we go again. She's back. The one that's like the tax-free that all the churches do. They get...
The 401k?
No.
W-2. I don't know. I'm not smart, Kayla.
It's a something 03C. Whatever.
I don't know.
Y'all know what I'm talking about.
8675309. I don't know.
It's tax deductible.
Okay.
My brain, I'm tired. It's not working. Okay, so there is the possibility that Kanye just wants to develop real estate. He said it before that he likes to buy up things. He's bought up like a mansion in Miami, like all this stuff because he wants to develop real estate. Now, if you're wanting to develop real estate, wouldn't you think that you'd go through and understand how to do so legally?
I mean, one would hope.
Well, he's twice now not gotten the proper permits for these things and built stuff and then had to tear them down because he was discovered not having the proper permits.
He just seems like a shoot
chaotic.
First, aim later type of a person.
He really is.
All
Fly
the time.
by the seat of his pants.
Yeah.
You know? He, okay, so the first place, he has like property in LA and he was building these Star Wars Death Star replica dome-shaped buildings that were supposedly going to be a prototype for homeless homes. And he got like the framework up and then people started submitting noise complaints, and so the city came out and was like, whoa, you don't have the permits for this, and he had to tear it all down. Then he purchases these 2 ranches in Wyoming and starts to build let me get this correct, an amphitheater called the West Meditation Large Impact Structure. And he had to put it on pause because he lacked building permits for it. Like, you'd think he'd learn after the first time, but no, apparently not.
He's going to make a great cult leader. Right. He's going to be one of the best ever made.
No, I think Kim is going to be the brains behind the operation.
Someone
She's getting the
has to
law
be.
degree somehow without going to law school. I still don't understand how that one works. But she's getting a law degree, so she's going to work all of these things out for him.
Maybe that's why she's getting a law degree.
Right.
Oh.
Okay, so Monster Lake Ranch was the first one they purchased. It's been renamed West Lake Ranch. It stretches across 4,524 acres that are deeded, and then another 4,654 acres of land are leased from the Bureau of Land Management. It includes a restaurant, a saloon, a convention center, an office building, multiple homes and cabins that can accommodate up to 70 guests, a shooting range, pens for game birds and corrals, barns, and other outbuildings. Why do you need buildings that can house 70 plus people, Rachel?
For a commune.
Exactly. But if that's not enough, let's buy another one, okay? The Bighorn Mountain Ranch sits on 6,713 acres with a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom main house, in addition to 3 cabins which can fit between 4 and 6 guests each.
Just
I
a
can't
humble
do
little
math,
setup.
but that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay, so before the ranches in Wyoming, West flew celebs and media out to Wyoming. He's so humble. To sit around a bonfire and listen to his new music. Then,
what celebs are like, yeah, I'm going to fly to Wyoming just to hang out with Kanye.
And listen
He's got
to
some
Chick-fil-A
ideas.
on Sunday.
He's got some ideas and he wants me to hear his album.
Well, you want to know the best part? After that, he released sweatshirts with simply the word Wyoming on them for $145 each and sold over 5,000 in 30 minutes.
Wow. I mean, I'd join a cult, but not his. He's too much. I just hate arrogance. I hate arrogance so much, and he's just got it in spades.
I know. Well, he had that song, this one's for the assholes. I'm like, you, sir, that is you. But this still could just all be a big flex of Kanye's, as he was quoted. Okay, now if you remember the thing with Taylor Swift where he got him, he's like, I'm gonna let you finish, but Beyonce is the greatest artist of all time. Okay. He said, this is quoted, I'm going to be one of the biggest real estate developers of all time, like what Howard Hughes was to aircrafts and what Henry Ford was to cars. Or he's just creating a massive cult. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think the brains behind it will be Kim.
Lord help him.
I know it.
All right. Well, I'm sold.
You're sold on joining the cult or sold that it is a cult?
Like I said, I'd join a cult, not his. But no, there's too many
you don't
questionable.
Want Chick-fil-A not on Sunday?
I don't even like Chick-fil-A, period.
That's true. If he sang Taco Bell, you would be in.
Don't play with my heart like that. Don't you play. We don't talk about Taco Bell like that. Not in the same sentence as Kanye. So, no, yeah, I think it's a cult.
I do too.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, for sure.
Let us know what you guys think, please.
Yes, I would love to know. All right, guys. Well, we've given you a lot to think about. Be cautious of people claiming to be the Lord.
Yes, be cautious of things that claim a sisterhood or a brotherhood. That's usually your first clue that something's not right.
Yeah, if it seems too good to be true, they always say it probably is.
Yes.
So, anyway, good luck sleeping, guys.
Good luck sleeping.